It's always weird to see couples Venmo each other.
That drives me insane.
I hate it.
I have so many couples, they've been married for 5-10 years and they're Venmoing
Venmoing each other?
No, some of them are multimillionaires. I'm like, stop this shit.
That's
this
crazy.
is crazy.
Hello and welcome back to the U Up podcast. I'm Jordana Abraham.
And I am Jared Freed. We Love a Friday feels it is our last of the year, and we thought, what better way to end the year by having an exciting talk about finances. So
what kind of setup is that? What the hell? Hold on, I'm taking over this podcast. Money is exciting. We're gonna have fun.
It's Ramit and Jordana now.
Yeah,
You've
that's
ruined
it. I'm a fly on the wall.
Yes.
Ramit Sethi, thank you for coming on.
Coming back.
Coming back.
You were such a great guest last time. You were on in 2022. For if you guys haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that episode. It's how to talk about money with your significant other. Such a great conversation. We're so excited to have you back.
Well, hold on. But also, the book is out.
Yes.
It's out. Go buy it. It's
a new book.
New book. And it's literally built for this podcast. Money for Couples. That's the name. I mean, literally, like, you should be here. Like, we need you. You're our money correspondent.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on. And you got the Netflix show.
Thank you.
People can go watch it right now.
Yeah, watch the show, How to Get Rich, podcast.
All of it.
Instagram. I especially enjoy your Instagram.
Thank you.
What you do is you bring these couples on and you talk to them about money. And they're like, and we were talking before, his Instagram, the caption is like, please people, be nice to these people.
Well, we bring them on,
right.
So we bring on real couples,
yeah,
and we have them on video and audio on the podcast.
They agree to be on video.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they share every number. I'm talking about net worth, how much they spend, how much debt they have. It is as intimate as it gets. You know, people would rather talk about their sex life than talk about...
Literally just thinking that, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, before you get into this, it's Christmas time in New York City. There's this like, and I think other cities too, this weirdness around what do you tip the door people, the super, and in this debate, like,
there's so much
rages.
judgment. There's so much judgment when you ask someone and they tell you, you're like, oh, that's a little low.
Wait,
I'm gonna ask someone less cheap.
We should set the context because I moved here from California many years ago.
Yeah,
and I moved in the middle of the year, and then in December there was just these sheets of paper in the lobby, and it just said everyone's name, and I was like, what is this? Like, what's going on? And I literally texted my sister. And I'm like, why do they have this in the lobby? And she was like, oh my God, you don't know.
Right.
We're supposed to tip. And we had like 25 staff members in our building. And that was mind blowing to me because that doesn't exist in California.
No, it does. I don't think it exists.
Because people are in houses and not like...
Yeah, there's no doorman.
And the thing about money, and it's like this tipping thing is like a good example because you go, just like you said, like, you say, well, I give the guy the super this, and someone goes, you didn't give 50% of your rent? And you're like, is that the rule? And they talk about it like it's the rule, and someone else talks about
and then you think about all the people that must hate you because you haven't been doing that.
They're spitting in your food.
Right?
It's just, it is emotionally... It is money's so emotional.
Well, even that to talk about couples and money. I've heard couples fighting about how much they should tip the doorman.
Or like, tip at a restaurant, or
anything,
how much they spend at a hotel. I think this is a perfect example because money is full of secret expectations. You expect your partner to think about money the same way you do. But what's fascinating is when people get into a relationship, they rarely even know their own views on money. Like if I asked a random single person, what's your savings rate? They'd be like, huh? I'd be like, what's your asset allocation? They're like, what?
Right.
And yet they expect their partner to think the same way they do, but they don't even know how to think about money themselves. So you have one person who doesn't know a real philosophy on money. You have another person who probably doesn't know a philosophy on money. And then you have to create a philosophy together.
Right.
Whoa, it's no surprise that it's so stressful.
Well, and it goes to every we say this with like people like, what are we conversation? You know, if you're asking, some people ask, what are we, without even thinking of what they think of the relationship themselves. And it's the same thing with savings and what you do with the money conversation. It's so interesting how much it all relates. We know it all relates, but we don't want to even talk about it. Even then, we don't want to talk about it. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is uncomfortable. I mean, think about, there's this whole debate in the personal finance world. When should you talk about money? when you're dating. And like the real personal finance nerds are like, you should talk about it on the first date. I'm like, have you guys ever been on a first date? What the hell's wrong with you? But
Hey,
then,
so are you on a Roth IRA? Before we get started here.
but think about it. If you actually talked about money early on, say you really like this person, you've gone on a few dates.
What's early?
Let's say like in the first 5 dates,
Okay.
7 dates, and you know you don't have to talk about everything, but you're talking about how you grew up with money and do you think about saving? Would you like to one day live in New York or somewhere else? And let's say they told you something that really surprised you, like I have $38,000 of credit card debt. Here's the truth: almost nobody would break up with that person early on. So even though we think, oh, I should talk about money early, even though we mostly don't, even if you heard an answer you don't like, most people, they basically say, we'll deal with that later. Kind of makes me uncomfortable, we'll deal with it later. It's a big deal. You should never apologize for money being an important value you have. I find that a lot of people feel guilty that they are considering money early in the relationship.
Right.
But money isn't just like a number. It's where you live, it's what you eat, it's how you raise children if you choose to have them. It's deep down, it can be who you are.
I remember dating someone. It's not a breakup thing, but it is something that goes into how you factor their personality, like kind of their viewpoint of the world. Like I remember I dated someone with, they had mentioned this credit card debt that they had to me, but you know, and this is the uncomfortable part. In my mind, they were living a lifestyle that felt like they could get rid of the debt. Okay. Like, and you know better than I would ever know, but they say, I have heard, and maybe I'm wrong, that the first debt you should take care of is credit card debt. Like, just because it's the highest rate, and if you can take care of that first, you go after that first. And I was like, so in my mind, I'm like, it was kind of like having a messy room. Like,
this is proving my point. Yeah. Exactly. You're totally right. This is so common. Like you hear this thing, credit card debt, which generally, especially in your 20s and 30s, it's rarely medical debt. It's typically overspending. Right. And you go,
and again, these are assumptions I had. I had that was my assumption, that this was frivolous debt, not like weighing, go on, I'm sorry, but you're right.
And so most people, even though they might hear a number that shocks them, they go, it can be dealt with later. And that's okay. I don't mind. I'm not saying break up with someone because they have student loans or I would never say that. But we don't know how to think about it. If the number is $5K versus $20K, if it's student loan debt, if they have an obligation to take care of an elderly parent, how do we actually factor that in? These are the questions that nobody really talks about, And I want us to.
Was there a right answer?
Well, I mean, I think every single person kind of debates like, wow, well, let me ask you this. Like, if somebody came to you and they were like, I have $50K of credit card debt, what would you say?
I think I would say, how did you get into that, and what's your plan from getting out of it?
Amazing. What would you say?
The how would be first and foremost. Like, I'd be like, what are we spending money
on? But what if they're
just
like, I just went out a lot. I couldn't afford it. I just didn't realize it and just added up.
I would need to know like their plan, and it was kind of like, I think this is true for financial baggage, but to me, any kind of baggage, it's like everyone has their own thing. It's more about what's your plan for dealing with it, right?
Yes. So I'm so glad you said that. I think that so many people who have any type of baggage or any type of debt, whatever it may be, it can become this huge source of guilt and anxiety.
Right.
And especially when dating. And what I talk about in the book is, if you are in a relationship where you feel like you need to confess, first of all, let's just reframe that. You don't have to confess anything. You're simply talking about, here's where I am, and this is how I would have that conversation. We could talk about when, but you go up to your partner and you say, look, there's something I really want to talk about. Money. It's something we've kind of danced around, but I have something that I'd like to share with you. When I was in my 20s, I spent a lot of money going out. I was living in the city. I wanted to go out, and it kind of added up, and I ended up accruing some credit card debt. Now, in the last 3 years, I've gotten serious about paying it off. It's going to be paid off next year, and I just wanted to let you know because it's something that's really important to me. Boom. It takes away the shame. There's no reason to be ashamed, but it also is totally attractive to be saying, this is what I did. I accepted responsibility. Here's my plan.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like, with student debt, you know, when you pay it, there's a schedule. You know, it even tells you the year that you will pay it off. Like, you know, like this is credit card debt. I think weighs on people in a different way because it is like, it's like maybe I shouldn't have spent that, but I did, and now you carry it differently.
Yeah, you're right. People think about student loans, even though many people do not like them. They go, well, I got a degree, etc. But here's something interesting. I learned a lot of fascinating stuff researching this book. One of the things I learned is that 90% of people who are in debt do not know how much they owe. They don't even know the number. And 95% of people have no idea when the debt is going to be paid off. And I'm pretty compassionate with people, right? Like I never come down. I'm not the guy who comes and tells you don't spend money on coffee. I think that's all BS. If you want to spend extravagantly on the things you love, do it. As long as you cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. But I'll tell you this, if you have debt, you have to know how much you owe, and you have to know the exact month and year that it will be paid off.
That's got to be so stressful. It's got to be like having a suit that you're going to wear and you're not sure if it's going to fit or not.
I love that example.
Yeah.
And it's
like, because that's how I feel before like a wedding. I'm like, maybe the tux is going to fit. We'll find out the night before, you know? Like,
but like, let's at least figure it out. Let's shine a light on it, just like all this money stuff. And then we take away all the secrecy and shame.
So are you saying like, someone should have that plan of like, here is when it's going to be paid off before you should agree to date them if they're sharing that with you?
I think, first of all, like I said, almost nobody knows this stuff. Almost nobody realizes you can go online.
You have empathy for these people. If you're sitting there listening going, well, I don't know, go fuck yourself.
No, that's okay.
Like, this is something that this is like move one is, hey, here's one thing you can do.
Yeah, you got to know it. Here's how you do it. You go online, you search for debt payoff calculator, and you plug in your numbers. It's really easy. And suddenly, whether it's a mortgage, credit card debt, student loan, anything, you will see when it will be paid off. And what you will realize is if you add, for example, an extra $100, if you're doing that for a mortgage, you can often shave off years from that mortgage. A huge student loan debt, you put an extra $150, you can shave off years. So what this does is, first of all, it just gives you knowledge. And second of all, it gives you control. Because for so many of us, debt just feels like this thing that hangs over us like a horrible cloud. I'm like, no, this is money. It's not that complicated. We can take control. Then you can have these really healthy, positive conversations, which is the whole point of the book.
Right.
I love that. And it's called Money for Couples. We have it here if you're watching on YouTube. Great looking book.
Yes, beautiful.
Go check it out. We want you all to go buy it. The link for getting the book is in the description of this episode, so you can go buy it now. This is a great way to start you. I joked. I was joking in the beginning when I was saying we're ending with a financial episode. But this is like, I was actually talking to Jordana how I thought it was funny that like our last episode of the year, we're talking finances. But like, this is like, you know, a lot of us do, like push everything off to the new year. Just by buying this book, you can go, all right, I've already like done a favor for my future self.
January 1.
Right. The book is there.
New you.
The book is there. Like I do believe in like doing a favor for future you while you're being garbage you on December 27th. Because garbage us is here, living in December 27th. Awesome, like, you know, debt paying us is in January 9th.
It's like putting a $20 bill in your winter coat pocket.
That's exactly
Discover next year when
Yes.
you need it.
I love it.
I have a question for you. I'm not sure if you kind of address this in the book, but it's something I was talking about, and I think it's something that no one really talks about or wants to talk about, is this idea that almost like dating outside of your like socioeconomic status is almost like more taboo than dating like outside your race or outside like your like.
Can we talk about this?
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Because no one wants to talk about how rich people don't date poor people.
Right.
Well, it's really interesting. So first of all, in America, class is the ultimate taboo. We don't believe we have a class system, even though of course we do. Whereas in other countries, it's much more accepted that there's an aristocracy, etc.
Right.
But in America, we have this belief like we're all equal, etc. But that's obviously not true for a variety of socioeconomic gender reasons. Now, in America, it has become more stratified since the 60s of people moving cross-class. So, for example, let's just bring real people into it. I talk to couples on my podcast, and they will come on, they'll share all their numbers and what is the biggest challenge. And it's often the case that one partner grew up wealthier or more educated than the other. And they don't realize it, but that is the source of so much of their tension. For example, there are certain phrases people use that can tip me off to how they were raised. One of them is, we'll probably die with this debt. What do you think that tells you about the person who says it?
That their parents have a lot of debt.
Yes. They basically very likely grew up poor.
Right.
And there is not only an idea that you just die with debt, there may be, I'm not saying for sure, but there may be a lack of belief in their own agency. AKA, nothing I do really affects this, so why bother trying? Okay, now, part of it may be economic, part of it may be social, it may be geographical. There's so many, it may be being raised with two parents or one. There's so many different complex things here.
Right.
But this is stuff we don't talk about because it's very uncomfortable.
Very.
Now, but I'll give you another example. A real couple, they were dating. They were basically around the age of 40. This is one of my podcast episodes. She was very successful. She's an entrepreneur. She makes $200,000 per month.
Wow.
Incredibly successful. Her boyfriend did not grow up talking about money. In his family, they never even used the word investment, nothing. He recently started a business. He's making something like $40K a year. Okay. Now, they're both happy with each other, but things come up. In very specific ways when they go out to dinner. She says to him, I want you to occasionally pay. I like to feel taken care of. Sounds reasonable. He goes, cool, I want to.
Right, we're going to McDonald's.
He puts he puts the credit card down, his credit card.
Okay.
And she goes, no, I want you to put that money in a Roth IRA instead. So on one hand, she's asking him to occasionally pay, which he agrees to.
Right.
And on the other hand, when he tries to, she goes, no, I want you to put that in a Roth. So first I want to pause everyone because it's really easy to be like, that's crazy. Oh my God, why did she do that? I never do that on my podcast.
Right.
I go, tell me why. What's going on? We dig into their childhood. We discover her parents, since the age of roughly 5, have been talking about savings investing. His parents never did it. He only learned like 2 years ago what a Roth IRA is.
Right.
How can you expect two people who grew up totally differently to think about money the same way? You can't. So they came up with this what I think is a very creative solution. I'm gonna warn everybody, it's gonna sound crazy to you, but I don't care what it sounds like to you. I just want the couple.
Works for them.
Exactly.
Right.
So here's what they do. She goes, I want to feel like you are occasionally taking care of me when we go out to dinner. He goes, okay, cool. She still wants him to invest. So every so often before they go out to dinner, she will give him her credit card. And that night he will use her credit card, pull it out, pay for it, and everybody's happy.
Okay.
Now again, that's an unusual solution, but it kind of checks all the boxes.
Right.
Right.
And it's all in how you rationalize it. And
Yeah, like what I love about this is the two of them did not have a shared vision. It was her feeling one way, him feeling another way. This is how so many of us in relationships feel. It's like, he's a spender, she's a saver, or why do they do this and why do they do that? Everyone's gonna be different, but I find that almost no couples have a shared vision of a rich life. And when you have a shared vision, these are the big things. Do we believe in saving? How often do we want to take a vacation? Are we going to have children? If so, are we going to put them in certain activities? These are the big picture. When you have a beautiful shared vision, you don't have to argue about the price of coffee anymore.
Right.
So much of like the relationship and money conversations, like I love that because she's, they're doing it their way. I do understand the need for a woman to say, I feel good when the guy throws the card down. That's something. And they figure out a way to that goal. I think it's hard. If you were to like Frankenstein a financial couple from date one, like if you were to like create, because like
map it out?
Yeah, map it out.
Yeah.
The perfect.
Well,
Because
I was going to ask that too. Is like, what point should you find out how much someone's
Oh my
salary
God.
is.
I've never been
Right.
asked this question. I love it. If I could map it out.
Map out the financial dating
what
life.
date are you like? How much do you make a year?
Okay,
Well,
love
because
it.
I right.
I don't know. I don't know. To me, I mean, I had those discussions with Mike. I didn't really know the full number until we moved in together. I saw his W-2 too.
Right.
Like,
Wait, that's how it happened?
That's like the full, like the full.
Wait, what was the timeline? Like, what if you moved in a month after you met?
No,
Like,
we moved in like 2 years into dating.
and okay, cool.
I had like a rough idea of how much, but it was like then we're replying. We both hand in our W-2s
Why did you hand in your W-2s?
to get approved for an apartment.
Okay, no, this is so funny. This is so funny. So first of all, most people never seriously talk about money except for like 3 or 4 times in their entire lives. And one of them is buying a house, okay? Another one is when you get to roughly the age of like 55, because you start to be like, oh my gosh, retirement, and then you start to talk about that. There's a couple of other examples like kids, when you start to talk about like school, etc. But so funny that you didn't sit down and talk about money, like let's proactively talk about it. It was like, oh shit, we got to get this apartment, get your W-2.
Right.
Right.
Totally normal.
I'll be personal. I mean, like I was in a relationship and I was like, and I look back and I'm like, I wish I had like a creative, because I'm thinking of this woman with you do the card, the creative solution. Like, let's be like, let's find a way where date one, you do something small to make it not this big thing.
Yes.
You know, like let's get creative
Right.
here.
It
Because
doesn't make it feel like work.
Right, because
necessarily.
I was in a relationship, I remember, like, and it was, I owned my apartment, I had tenants, and then the tenants during COVID move out, and it becomes, what are we going to do? And it's like, the conversations now, we're in finance land. I'm paying 2 rents, I'm paying a mortgage and a rent. I got to figure out if someone can move into that apartment. And it felt like we were so over here relationship-wise that it was so hard to go back and do to learn how to walk at that point, and it kind of, to me, it created.
Because you started the conversations too late, you're saying?
Yeah,
about
there was no
finances?
there was no basis, there was no groundwork for
foundation.
right, for the foundation of I don't even know how we're gonna talk about this.
Yeah.
Did you know how much money she made and vice
No,
versa?
we were living and we're living together, and I'm going, and now it's this money conversation that I've never really didn't know how to do, never really had with them, never really, and I do think it made me kind of revert back and become more alone. If I'm to be honest, I was like, I guess I'm taking care of this on my own.
Well, it's like you don't feel understood, probably.
Not understood, and
But
just
also don't
this
know
is
how to
my
do
problem,
it.
not theirs.
Right.
And if we're going, if relationship wise, if we're in this we thing, but it's a front, because now I'm in this me thing.
So let me tell you what I just heard in that example. I heard so many layers. First, I heard that you never had a series of conversations about money. It was never part of your normal dialogue. It was episodic, meaning when something comes up, and it's
Right.
always something bad, then we talk about money.
And I felt
Never
embarrassed.
positively.
Right.
And I felt embarrassed.
Okay, that's the next thing.
That I fucked up. That I was like, I'm this fucking dating guy on a podcast talking out of my ass, and I'm sitting here into a relationship being like, I don't know how to even do this.
That's the next thing I heard, which is all the ways you described money was negative.
Right.
Shame, retreating into yourself. That's very common,
Right.
especially for men. And then finally, just, I don't know how to do this. How am I supposed to talk about money? What do I say? What words do I use? When
Right.
my wife and I started to talk, we talked about a prenup, which we can talk about. I was like, what do I do? And I looked online and everyone's like, have the conversation. I was like, what the fuck? What words do I say?
Right.
Tell me the words.
Right.
That's why in the book I put word for word scripts, right? How to have your first positive money conversation. That would have been really
Right.
helpful. And even if you're 5 years into a relationship and you're like, oh my God, something is not right. We're intuitive. We can feel it. Then you go and you go, let's recalibrate this whole thing. So I'll give you an example of what you do, and then I'm gonna map out the whole relationship.
Yeah.
Your first positive money conversation is gonna surprise you because you think I'm gonna be like, pull out your credit card debt. Don't do that. You shouldn't even be looking at numbers.
Yeah.
Your first positive money conversation has 4 parts and that's it. You go,
And when should you do this? Whenever.
most people listening who are gonna do this are already in a relationship.
Okay.
So they're like, listening to this guy, I realized we've never actually really talked about money. We've talked about why they spend too much at the gas station, or we've had an argument about Target. We don't have any foundation. We don't have a philosophy.
Okay.
So let's have a positive conversation instead of what most people do, which is we fight about money once every 6 weeks, then we ignore it, pretend it, we just paper over it until it happens again 6 weeks from now. What a horrible way to treat money. It's supposed to be fun, positive. You're supposed to talk about money positively, proactively, and regularly.
Yeah.
That's
So
how
this is when you're already dating.
Yeah, let's say you want to have your first positive money conversation, dating or married. So you go, you know what? I realized that when we talk about money, it actually doesn't go the way I want it to. I want us to have fun talking about money. I want us to feel good. And I realize sometimes I might be a little bit of a downer, or I might be really into the numbers. And I just want us to recalibrate it. That's part one. It's you acknowledging what you want and maybe sharing a little bit of vulnerability. Two, you go, right now, when we talk about money, I feel overwhelmed. I feel scared, and I feel curious. What about you? Notice you're tossing the ball to your partner. Too often when we talk about money, we just like verbally vomit. We got to stop that. We got to have a dialogue.
Right.
What do you think? Get your partner involved. Number three, how I want to feel confident. I want to feel competent. I want to feel connected. Okay, cool. And then finally, when should we talk next? That's it. Declare victory
Not
and
right
go
now.
home. Not now.
Okay.
It's over. Give each other a hug. Go for a walk. You don't have to cover everything at once. You have the rest of your life to do it.
Let's
So
go
that's
from
how you bring up the conversation.
Yeah.
let's go from date one.
Day one.
yes.
Day
You
one.
meet,
You
What,
meet on Hinge.
what restaurant is he? What bar is he thinking?
Right.
That's the first. That's the
Right.
first money indicator.
So
Right.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty good. I think we are all amateur detectives. We're picking up clues. So where does he or she suggest? Who offers to pay? Is there a tip involved? These are things we don't have to make a big deal of it. Just noticing.
Yeah.
Right.
Jared said he gets an Uber back after someone stays over for
If
someone.
you stay over,
That's
Oh, wow.
Uber X.
Classy
I'll-
move.
Uber X. Okay.
Not the black. I you
Not
know,
Leo.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like show off here,
Right,
but
yeah.
I'll send you home.
Very respectable.
The
Okay.
car's waiting.
Okay, so a few dates into it. Let's say 5 dates. 5 dates means you like this person. You've gone out several times. Cool. At 5 dates, you're curious about this person. You still don't know them. You want to get to know them. So you might be asking questions like, how'd you grow up? What'd you guys do during summer?
Right.
These are just general questions, but you were genuinely curious. You're also listening.
Right.
Ooh, what did they say? Oh, we went to Aspen. What? Oh, that's interesting. Like we went to a Pizza Hut. That's very interesting. I'm learning a lot. What kind of things did your family do for fun? Learning about them, learning about clues. Then you could even get a little bit more specific about money. Like I would always start with myself, sharing a little bit of vulnerability. One thing that I've been learning about is money. I'm trying to get better at investing. And it's like, I thought it was scary, but it's actually pretty interesting. What about you? Have you ever thought about money, or do you do anything with your money, etc.? Notice that I'm not being like, how much is on your W-2?
Right.
It's
Right.
just like general questions first about how you grew up, who you are, what do you do for fun, what's your hobby? If their hobby is equestrian, you're like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Expensive, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to judge.
My
I'm just
hobby
trying
is
to
collecting
get
gold bricks. I'm just
So that's it. We're not pushing. We're
Okay.
just asking.
right.
And I'm also looking for, are they willing to talk about money? So
Right.
if they are not, the biggest red flag in a relationship, whether you are dating or married for 20 years, if they are not willing to talk about money, that's it. It's a deal breaker. Because I can work with people who are overly frugal. I can help people who don't know how amortization works. All that stuff can be solved. It's not that hard.
Right.
But if you are simply not willing to talk about money at all,
Right.
game over.
So when can you ask someone what their salary is?
So there are natural moments where it makes sense to talk about money.
Okay.
One of them is when you're going on your first trip together. And you go, hey, I just want to break the ice on this. I want to just talk about this openly. How are you thinking about paying for this trip? I can tell you my thoughts, but I'm curious what you think. And that's a normal place where you're actually going to talk about money. What if your partner wants to spend like $10,000 a night and you're like, I can't afford that.
Right.
That's good to know. I think
the trip one is a good
that's a good way to get
like
in,
a mini move in.
What's our budget for this trip?
Yeah,
Right.
like, hey, and I will say one thing, especially for the people listening. Sometimes I think people give away their power too much when they ask their partner, what do you think? And I want people to build confidence in money. The way you build confidence is through competence. And when you ask these questions, you better come in with your own thoughts before they tell you the answer. It's like
answer the questions yourself before you know.
Yeah, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. So if I were in a new relationship and I were asking this travel question, I might say, hey, I was thinking about our trip. I'm so excited, first trip together. I have some thoughts about how we should think about the finances on this trip. I'm curious if we can talk about that. Notice I'm just asking micro questions because money makes everybody like super rigid and nervous. So they're going to go, yeah, let's talk about it. And you might say, you know, I've looked at my finances and here's how much I can afford to spend. How are you thinking about it? What this does is it lets you maintain power. Meaning you can't just be like, hey, how are you thinking about this? And then let them dictate the terms. You should come in with your plan.
Right. I'm here for a $20 million trip. You go, oh, fuck, how am I going to go back on this?
Exactly.
Right.
So keep your power. That means you got to know your numbers, which is one of two parts of living a rich life. To live a rich life, you got to know your numbers, meaning you have to understand the basics of personal finance, what I cover in this book. And then two, you got to master your money psychology, meaning part of the money psychology here is I'm not afraid to talk about money. I'm not going to apologize for wanting to talk about money. This is a normal part of life. And I'm going to talk about it leaning forward, not saying, what do you think? Should we? No!
Well,
we're talking about money and we're proud to do it.
Right. So, and you know, to anyone listening, this is all easier said than done. You know, people go, well, I'm going to scare the person away. But like,
no.
Anyone who's really dating you.
Right. It's going to think it's hot that you're like, again, owning, I think, your own financial situation. And if they don't, again, I think if they're like, that's like tacky, we're not going to talk about that.
Right.
I think that's the bigger red
flag.
flag.
Well, they were also breaking up with you anyways. Like, I think that's like a big thing where it's like, if it's money or what are we or, you know, these conversations only scare someone who's not there for the conversation.
It's ridiculous.
Well,
all of us know you have to be willing to have these conversations. And this is the easiest of conversations. Like, hey, what kind of hotel are you thinking about? It's easy relative to what we're going to talk about in life. There might be challenges around housing. There might be challenges around fertility. There's so many challenges we're going to encounter. This is practice. So I want everyone to remember, in America, we have this deep invisible script, this belief that money is unromantic. And I think a lot of people listening are going, oh, yeah, it is unromantic. I don't want to talk about this. I'm here to challenge that belief because when you see money, you see a spreadsheet with a bunch of decimal places. When I see money, I see a beautiful apartment, a family trip to Disneyland. I see the ability for you or one partner maybe to stay home and or pick up the kids every afternoon from school. Money is not just numbers. Money is where you live and what you eat and even who you are.
Right.
So it is deeply romantic to be able to connect about what your rich life is.
Right.
For
You're going to feel better after. It's like a massage.
Well,
you know, like the money conversation might be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. That's okay. Yeah. But I love that you said that. It is uncomfortable. The first couple of times, I have the actual scripts in there, and I make sure to tell you what's going to happen with your partner, because your partner might be caught off guard. They haven't read this book like you have, and they might shut down. And I tell you exactly how to handle that. I also tell you, it's not about, like, you're not trying to grind them into the ground. You're not trying to dominate or defeat them. You're trying to connect with them. That's why sometimes we end the conversation.
Build something together.
Yeah, sometimes we don't have to do it all at once. We go, hey, you know what? I feel like right now we're not connecting about this. Let's just pause. We'll talk about it on Tuesday. All good.
I have a couple scenarios, which I think that we get emails a lot. I've gotten them on Oversharing also that I think I would love to get your take on.
Let's do it.
One thing I see a lot is engagement ring money conversations that get very tense, where it's like usually woman in the relationship has a certain expectation, And the guy maybe doesn't find the value in spending this on a ring, but then the woman doesn't want to feel like she's like materialistic, but she also wants what she wants. So should she say nothing and get a different ring than she wants, or should she, say something and then kind of admit that she wants that she's maybe to some more shallow than others
give
would think.
her credit card to the guy, and then he slides it across the table.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
It's a creative solution.
I see
Creative
this all
solution,
we get
yeah.
emails about this all the time.
Yeah.
Like, and that's you're building a life together, right?
Love this. I love
such
this.
a good one.
It's so juicy. It's so mired in the shadows. There are these feelings like you use the word shallow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, just think about how many layers are. So let's first acknowledge that a lot of people, this is a fraught moment. An engagement ring symbolizes more than the diamond that is being purchased. Okay, it symbolizes connection, it symbolizes financial security, and many other things. Now, you might think that's crazy, but that is the symbol that we've accepted in America.
Right.
And this, to me, is such a perfect example of how most of us treat money, which is like we have these feelings, but we don't say anything because we're afraid what our partner will think, and then it just happens, and we're kind of like, or like, ooh, instead of talking about it.
Okay.
So what you might do is you might first you got to work on yourself, right? We can't go to our partner and expect them to fix what we ourselves don't know about. So you might say to yourself, what are my expectations about a ring? What would I like? What would be amazing? What would be good?
Would be acceptable.
Acceptable. Yeah. We're like making a freaking McKinsey matrix right now.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have to do this on your own first. And then you got to ask yourself why. So just to say like, I want a big ring, that's not acceptable. We need to be specific, and we need to actually look at some numbers. That's one of the things that I find very common in relationships is there's a lot of feelings, and money is emotional, but at a certain point, you got to look at some freaking numbers.
Right.
So if you have an expectation of a ring, then you should probably look online and see how much that costs, just for your own knowledge.
Okay.
That's number one. Like my wife, she came to me and she was like, well, we were talking, we had this Google Calendar invite. I still remember because we put our freaking agenda on it. I love this. We sat down and we were like, we had a serious conversation about like, what do we want together? Do we want kids? Where do we want to live? And she was like, I would like to be engaged by Q1 of next year. I was like, what the fuck?
All business.
Q1.
She
love
speaks in
it.
financial
Yes.
quarters. I
Yeah.
love this woman. So, but I like that she was very clear with what she wanted. So then
Right.
later we were talking about the ring. And I was like, look, like I'm new to this. I'm going to get a lot of advice. She sent me over an email with very specific things about what kind of ring she liked. She didn't talk about size,
Okay.
but she did tell me the style she liked, etc.
Did she not talk about size because she thought it was tacky, or because
That's a good question.
well, I mean, like that's sort of like the micro nuances
So-
of these kind of things. Where
Exactly,
it's like,
and that's the thing, right?
Right.
Like you might have a nice oval ring, but if it's smaller than what you want, you're like, maybe
Right.
maybe it was an unspoken desire that I didn't feel comfortable articulating.
right.
Or the other one is you get ultra specific and you use this as an opportunity to talk about money together. You go, hey, I understand that this is a big purchase. I understand that most people, they kind of just like guess, and I actually want to use this as an opportunity for us to talk about money together. What are you thinking about the financial part of this? Do you feel comfortable? How are you thinking about this? And your partner, I guarantee, heterosexual relationship, he's going to be caught off guard, like, oh my God, I have no idea. I don't know how much these rings cost, etc. But imagine you're both talking about a ring. Let's just say it's a ring that's $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever. Imagine that you're at the point, maybe you're living together, where you're actually talking about money together and you're going, wow, if I could afford a $6,000 ring, but it's going to mean that I might not be able to contribute as much to our wedding or to our IRA.
Right.
And you're having these conversations together instead of, let me hope things turn out my way and then maybe I might feel resentful afterwards.
Can I
Right.
add something to this to make it even harder?
Okay, yeah.
To make it more
That was
difficult?
pretty hard. I'm
That was
sweating
a hard
right now.
one. That's hard.
but
No,
the-
and I'm thinking because that one also, it's like the romance that's steeped in that, and like discussing the price feels like especially taboo.
Yeah,
Right.
and you don't
Yeah.
have to. Remember that. For everybody, I'm not saying you have to pull up a freaking brochure and look at prices. But you should ask yourself, one, what do I want? What do I really want? Number two, why? And number 3, which route am I taking? Route 1, where I just share generalities and then I accept what happens. Or route 2, where I want to be more collaborative with it, up to potentially talking about price. But frankly, I think like less than 1% of people will do that.
Right.
So here's how we make it more difficult. You say you like an oval, you like this setting, you send it to your husband, he goes, got it. You get engaged, it's huge. Biggest, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe you can.
Sounds great.
It's great, right?
Yeah.
He
killed it.
He killed it.
Sure.
It is the biggest ring. You're like, oh my God, I didn't expect this size ring, but here we are. Wow.
What's the problem
This is
here?
amazing. And then he goes, you guys are in each other's clutches. You're engaged. The sheets are everywhere.
Fuck,
And you're like, I
getting
just
hot
can't
right now.
believe, right? I just can't believe you bought me that huge ring. It's just so much bigger than I thought that we could afford.
Yes.
And he's like, baby, I found this great lab-grown diamond.
Love it. Wait, first of all,
Dried up.
Wait, I love lab grown.
Yeah.
Well,
I do too.
problem.
I do too.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying this is a problem
Yeah.
as much as it makes the conversation more
Well, it
difficult.
does. Yeah, it does.
Because I would, if you ask any diamond person,
Yeah.
they go, "There's no difference." Like
Yeah.
to the human eye,
Yeah.
there's no. You could only figure it out via like testing it in a lab.
Right. In fact,
It
I
is a
think the way
diamond.
to tell is that it's like clearer than a real diamond.
It's
like
even better.
Yes,
So then you'll have one woman who you can tell, like it's always the same type of woman that will go, well, the imperfections is what make it so great. Like they already have like a script and
right.
like
well,
you-
that's why the engagement ring conversation is so interesting, because so much of it is about what other people are thinking
Exactly.
about your ring.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, literally, look at
Yes.
the pictures. It's like holding up a freaking ring.
Yes, it's like
and,
that.
and
Yes.
men, we have never been taught this idea of holding up our finger. It doesn't
No.
exist to men.
Yeah.
Like it's not intuitive. We
Just
never
the
see
middle
it.
Look at
finger.
the
Just
Selena
exactly.
Gomez. The Selena Gomez engagement. The first picture is not. He's not even in it. It's just the ring.
Yeah. Okay.
Get out of here, Penny.
Okay. Listen, I do want to say one last thing about this. I find that in the dating discourse, we are obsessed with who should pay for the first date, and also this diamond ring
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yes.
a hot topic.
I did a TED Talk on it for that reason.
Really?
Who should pay for the first date?
Okay, I just want to say this. Like, when it comes to money, sure, it's a fun topic to talk about first date, but why are we not thinking about the next 16,000 days that we have together? That's the thing that really matters with money. The
Right.
first date, okay, it's fun to talk about, it's juicy, but I want to know, how do we connect with money? Do we have the
Right.
same values?
Right.
Are we going to retire at the age of 50? Are we going to have children? Are we going to take care of our parents? Those are the questions that are much more meaningful over the course of a long relationship.
We have an email. Let's get to
Let's do the email. Yeah.
First, but before we do the email, answer this question. Who should pay for the first date?
I'm not answering that question.
Go
Here,
buy
we
the
already
book.
gave him a hard one.
Money for couples.
Money for
In the
Couples.
description of this episode. All right, I'll read the email. You ready?
Yes.
After hearing Jordana's 7-year anniversary request to hear from more male listeners, I decided to write in. I'm a 32-year-old man who started listening in 2024 after my female friend introduced me to the show. I recently entered the modern dating world after a 7-year relationship / marriage that ended in a mutual amicable divorce. Thanks for all the advice and laughs and helping me navigate modern dating. My issue in dating is struggling with gender-based expectations regarding finance. Recently, after 2 months of exclusively dating someone, she told me, as a woman, I feel you should be paying for everything, and I'm upset we've been splitting the bills on dates. I ended things with her because I didn't want a relationship where I'm expected to pay for everything simply because I'm a man. Other women say similar things like, it doesn't feel romantic if the man doesn't pay. My perspective is that the person who sets up the date should offer to pay, but I'm happy to go Dutch. If I set up the date, I'll pay, but I will split if my date offers. If the woman sets up the date, I'll offer to split the bill. Once I'm in a serious committed relationship, I'm happy to split things equitably based on our respective incomes, lifestyles, time taken off for the children, and other similar factors. Hearing any variation of as a man you should stifles my connection, I feel. It is a true deal breaker for me, and I have stopped dating multiple women over it. Women have stopped dating me over it too. For context, I live in a major U.S. metro area, and date women who have similar or greater incomes than me. How do I approach this conversation with my dates? What are your thoughts? Sincerely, a Dutch man betch.
Whoa. Okay.
Thoughtful email.
Yeah.
This guy, and it is like a pain tolerance email. Like when I hear this, it's like, Jordana, you've said it before. It's like you'll be, people are single until they really hate being single.
Right.
Like there's a version of person out there who like if people, there's a point where they're like, how lonely are you? Well, now you'll get into this relationship.
Kinda.
Right.
Yeah.
This guy is literally like, I care about this date paying metric I've created because he's really put thought into it. When you say like based off of respective incomes, lifestyles, and connect and time off for children, like that's kind of like you've taken something very vague and made it very specific. But I don't know how he does that.
Well,
but
I do agree with him in some aspects. I do think hearing anytime you should or
horrible.
this is how it is
Right.
is like, or this is what it means to be a man from someone, I think is off-putting and tells you more about character than maybe their relationship with money in general.
But also, it does seem from his email, he's bringing this up in a date 3. This guy's braver than me because it sounds like he's like bringing it up kind of early.
There's a
Like
difference between I like or like it's hot to me when you do this and you should,
right, totally.
Nice.
right?
Okay, I agree with some of what he says. It never feels good to have certain expectations put on you because of your gender. That doesn't feel good, okay? I respect his view on that. And I can respect that nobody wants to feel taken advantage of. It just feels kind of like gross. My ears or antenna go up when he says this has happened multiple times.
Right.
And I've been broken up with too. And it's just like a little too much where if he's writing this in an email, my secret dream is to freaking shadow this guy on like the next 10 dates and be like, what the fuck? Why'd you say that?
Right.
And
It feels like a religion the way he's talking about it.
It's become the thing. And you almost go into a date like looking like, what's she gonna say? When's she gonna say it?
Right.
And so
Is she gonna pass this test
Yeah.
that I give
Yeah.
on
You
every
You want to
date?
be right.
Yeah. So my feedback would be like, first of all, therapy. As we know, as guys will rather get a freaking microphone and start a podcast than go to therapy. We know that.
I've done it
as
3 times.
As 2 male podcasters,
I've got 3.
Preaching to the choir there.
get
yeah.
some therapy. End the podcast to my friend who emailed. Okay. But I do think if you're looking for something, you're probably going to find it. So while I respect his view that he doesn't want to feel taken advantage of or the expectation as a man, I do think I might gently reframe what he's looking for. I'm looking for a partner who I can have a connection with. I'm looking for a partner where we share similar values. Like, spend your time looking for that. Take off the lenses of she's gonna be so bad and expect all these. Take that lens off. It didn't work for you. Let's find another lens that serves you. I'm looking for a partner who I can connect with and who shares my values. Now, when you go out, you're looking for this. You're not leading with your money. You're not leading with who's gonna pay for this date. It's just not the primary thing that you're leading with, and you're probably going to get very different results.
Let's say 5 dates. Let's say he pays for all 5. Okay. And then he wants to figure out this woman who he likes. He's gone on 5 dates with them.
Yeah.
How does she feel about paying
Splitting,
for the next
right.
date or splitting?
Yeah.
How would he start that
Love
conversation?
that. Love
in a
this
more
question.
positive
This is what
way?
has to happen.
Right, because I think he's doing
Yeah.
you and I have the same antennas. Like,
Yeah.
the way it's
a bit weird.
It's weird.
Yeah.
This
Right.
the way he's presented this is a little slightly askew. It's in the internet world of morally correct, but not socially real.
But I
you know?
respect the debate in his
Yeah,
head.
right,
of
totally
like,
agree.
right.
Yeah, this is like why it's such a great email.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people who say they always want me for my money, and then you
Right.
you see how they operate and like where they go and how they spend, and you're like, yeah, that's because that's all you fucking talk
Love
about.
is Blind.
Right. What's that?
Most recent Love is Blind. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, so how would he have that conversation? We got to first assume positive intent. We can't be like, she's been trying to get away with all this financial shenanigans.
I'm gonna watch.
You're fucked if you do that. So it's like,
Going on this 6th date to see this person
my frame on
squirm.
this is, I want to have an honest conversation and I want to see where she's at. I'm not saying, you're cheap. You need to pay for the next date. That's doomed if you're arguing in the weeds. But instead it's saying like, look, this is important to me. And in the relationship that I want to create, it would be important for us. What do you think about that? Notice that if I just went in guns blazing saying, I want you to pay for the date, she'd be like, fuck you. And rightfully so. It came out of nowhere. But now I've set the foundation.
Right. It's not who should pay for the date.
It's us. What are we?
Right. What
we
are
are
we?
generous with each other.
Right.
Oh, that's how you do it.
And he's not waiting for her to like not do it to
And then
like
getting
yell at her.
pissed.
I mean, we had this on a different episode where the woman was going to the guy's apartment and then all of a sudden he's like to her, and you never bring anything over. Like,
Yes.
remember?
That's
right.
and she's like, where did that come from?
Right.
It's because we need to be much more proactive talking about money. Remember this, most of us have this internal phrase, we need to have the conversation about money. You would never have that phrase with parenting. We need to have the conversation about parenting. You'd be like, we need to talk about parenting for the rest of our lives. Same thing with money. We get the opportunity to talk about money together.
Well,
This was
for me,
great.
this was a fantastic episode. What a way for us to end the year. This was really,
Yes.
I think like if anyone's listening right now, if you've gotten to the end, you've done your, your due diligence for 2025. Yeah. You've had your, your healthy podcast
Exactly.
moment.
2025 is the year for you guys to get your shit together financially. No debt.
Go buy
Thank
the
you so
book.
much for coming on. Ramit Sethi, Money for Couples. Get this book wherever books are sold. It's going to change your financial life as a couple.
We'll be back next week. Boom.
You Up is produced by Candice Maniga and Shannon Sassone. Edited by Emily Freed. Social media by Candice Maniga. Booking by Adley Freelander. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our show. Send your emails to youup@betches.com. And check out you.up.podcast on Instagram.